There's a message written in mud, 400 feet underground, that took rescuers 6 weeks to find, and it wasn't left by the person they were looking for. There's a man who died less than 48 hours after getting stuck in a crack you couldn't fit a mailbox through. And there's a cave diver who felt his own guideline go slack in his hand, in water so dark he couldn't see the line snap. Each of these is a true story, and each one ends with someone who was sure, right up until the moment they weren't. Let's start in South Africa, in a flooded system called Bushman's Hole. It's September 1984. You're a cave diver named Nuno, and you've just spent hours laying a guideline through nearly 400 feet of black water, all the way to a hidden air pocket called Milner Hall. You and your two dive partners decide to swim it once more together before calling it a day. On the way back out, someone taps your shoulder. It's not the "let's go" signal, it's a warning. One of your three-man team, Peter, isn't behind you anymore. You backtrack and spot him ducking into a side passage. You wave him back to the guideline. He nods, drops out of sight again, and this time when you surface, he isn't there. You go back down. You search every side tunnel your lungs and tank will allow. Nothing. By the time your air runs dry, the silt has turned the whole cave into a brown fog. Here's what nobody in that search party knows yet. Peter is still alive. He's just lost. No line, no light he wants to waste, in a cave shaped like a maze in 3 dimensions. He finds a dry ledge and waits, flashing his light at the water every so often, hoping someone swims past. Rescue divers can barely see their own hands. That first night, they call it off, convinced they're now looking for a body. Weeks of weekend dives turn up nothing, and the search shuts down for good. Meanwhile, Peter is still down there, starving, rationing a flashlight battery that's already nearly dead. At one point, he crawls over 100 feet down a passage, hits a dead end, and crawls back to the only spot he knows. Weeks later, volunteers, including Nuno, finally crack the case, discovering a hidden connection between the dry and flooded sections. Following a set of footprints, they find Peter's body at a dead end. Written near him in the mud is a final message to his family. "I love you." The autopsy shows he survived 3 weeks down there before starvation took him. And the detail that still haunts the divers who search for him: at one point, another rescuer came within 100 feet of him and turned back. Now picture a much smaller space, one you couldn't fit a mattress into. It's March 1982, and you're an experienced caver leading your 2 teenage sons and a troop of Boy Scouts through a system nicknamed the Crooked Swamp. You're bigger than everyone else in the group, so your logic is simple. If you can fit, so can they. You find an opening about 1.5 feet wide and decide to test it yourself first. Bad idea, but not for the reason you think. The mud underneath is slick, and as you inch forward, the floor beneath you just isn't there anymore. You're sliding, and there's nothing to grab. The crack you've fallen into is barely 5 inches across, narrower than a shoebox, angled downhill, and every time your sons pull on your legs, loose rocks slide down and jam it tighter. You're stuck. Rescuers arrive fast, but the space is so narrow only one person can squeeze in at a time. Ropes don't work. Hammers and chisels barely scratch the rock. You're cold, thirsty, and the temperature is doing exactly what hypothermia needs it to do. 2 of the smallest cavers anyone can find, a pair of sisters, try to reach you from the opposite side to pass in food and water. Even they can't get close enough. So the rescue team decides to dig straight down from the surface. All day Sunday they claw through dirt and hit solid bedrock about 12 feet short. By Monday, the responses from below have turned to grunts. A nurse checks for a pulse in your legs and finds none. With time running out, the crew brings in explosives, used with extreme care to blast through the last stretch of rock. Tuesday morning, they finally break through. It's too late. You died of hypothermia sometime between Sunday night and Monday morning, trapped for less than 48 hours in a 5-inch crack in the earth. Some deaths in caves don't come from being stuck. They come from running out of the one thing you can't live 8 minutes without: air. It's 1974 in a Welsh cave system with a series of underwater tunnels called sumps. Two friends, a diver in his mid-20s and his younger dive partner, are trying to push past the third sump, a passage so long an earlier explorer had already given up on it. On a solo trip, one of them swam nearly 900 feet through that sump and found something nobody expected, a dry passage leading to a fourth, completely unexplored sump. He didn't have the air to push it, so he turned back to get his partner. Weeks later, they return together and start laying line into sump 4. About 400 feet in, the younger diver runs out of guideline. They press on anyway. Every diver knows the rule. A third of your air going in, a third coming out, a third held in reserve for emergencies. They're already past that first third when the line runs out. And instead of turning back together, the lead diver assumes his partner will head out alone while he keeps pushing forward. He hits a wall of loose rock, hoping it hides an air pocket. It doesn't. He checks a side passage. Dead end. When he finally turns around, he's shocked to find his partner still there, deep in the sump, far past when he should have turned back. They signal each other to leave. Now. The lead diver burns through his main tank, switches to backup with barely enough air to make it out, surfaces, and waits on the bank. 10 minutes, 20, an hour. His partner never surfaces. When he swims back in to check the line, it goes slack in his hand, cut roughly 400 feet in. That's likely where his partner tried to switch tanks, got tangled in his own guideline, panicked, cut himself free, and swam the wrong way in the silt-clouded water with no line left to follow. It takes 12 years to recover his body. By then it's too dangerous to bring out, so he's left in the cave with a plaque near the entrance in his memory. A later explorer eventually finds the air pocket they'd both been searching for, just past where the line was cut. Our last story doesn't involve water at all, just rock, darkness, and a media circus that made everything worse. It's January 1925, and you're a Kentucky caver named Floyd, always chasing the next discovery to draw in tourists. You push through a gap barely 9 inches high, then another narrow slot, lowering yourself down an 80-foot pit into a cavern nobody has ever seen. But your lantern is fading, so you start crawling back out, nudging it ahead of you with your shoulder. Then it slips. It falls into a crack and shatters, and you're in absolute darkness in an unstable passage. Feeling your way out, you kick a rock loose, and it lands squarely on your leg, pinning you in place. You shout for hours. Nobody comes until the next morning, when a teenager stumbles onto you by chance. Your brothers arrive and start digging you out by hand, one scoop at a time, careful not to bring the ceiling down. But word gets out. Within days, over 1,000 people camp outside the cave entrance. Reporters, spectators, vendors selling food to the crowd. Someone lights bonfires to stay warm, and the melting ice sends freezing water pouring down into the passage where you're trapped. A reporter crawls in to interview you and rigs up a light bulb by your side, so people topside can tell by its flicker that you're still breathing. Think about that, your heartbeat broadcast as a light bulb to a crowd that came to watch. 4 days in, part of the tunnel above you collapses, sealing you off completely. Rescuers start an entirely new shaft from scratch, digging for days, occasionally hearing you groan just a few feet away. By the 17th day, they finally break through. But it's too late. You died of exposure and starvation, alone in the dark, a few feet from the surface in the crowd of 1,000 strangers who'd come to watch. 4 caves, 4 different ways to die underground: drowning, crushing, suffocating, starving. In every case, it wasn't the cave that killed anyone. It was one small decision made in the dark that couldn't be undone. People are still diving Bushman's Hole today. Divers are still pushing past Sump 4 in that Welsh cave, chasing the same air pocket that killed a man 40 years ago. The question worth sitting with isn't how these people died. It's why the next generation keeps going back down anyway. If you made it this far, You already have the instinct that keeps pulling people back into places like this. Subscribe if you want more stories like it. And if this one got you, a like actually helps more than you'd think. See you in the next one.